This episode is brought to you by Progressive.
Are you driving your car or doing the laundry right now? Podcasts go best when they're bundled with another activity, like Progressive home and auto policies. They're best when bundled too.
Having these two policies together makes insurance easier and could help you save. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save over $775 on average.
Quote a home and car bundle today at progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $779 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet. I'm your host, Mark Cashman, here with Chris McNulty.
Thanks, Mark. Today, we're joined by 6 guests. 6. First, we follow up with Funko, the company behind those cool pop figurines and the focus of the recent enterprise TV show we produced at Microsoft, SharePoint Swoop, the Internet Makeover show.
Yeah, so with 6 people, we're going to have to swoop 6 times. Swoop, 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 swoop. And the last 2 swoops are people that we chat with who actually helped behind the scenes. They were here at Microsoft, and one of them was back in Boston, your favorite town. And they talked to us about what they did with Funko to do site designs to get those up and running at Funko.
You know, my kids, because I have this tenuous connection through you to Funko, keep wondering why I haven't dumped a ton of swag on them for the holidays. So I think if they're listening to this, they may be expecting even more than I'm going to do.
Understood. So maybe we can get quick. What would be, your son's favorite pop? And we can see if we can work that out. What's your daughter's favorite characters?
Deadpool.
And
Han Solo.
Oh, Deadpool and Han Solo. All right. Well, we'll see if our friends at Funko can pull that out and put it under the Christmas tree. Shh. Get it under there when Santa arrives. So let's talk a little bit about what SharePoint Swoop actually is. So the TV show, the enterprise TV show, gave us the ability to really do a case study or evidence in a little bit of a different way. We actually went on site and we brought in 3 of our MVPs. We brought in Sue Hanley, Laura Rogers, and Ben Yallen to come in and do what they normally do. They consult with customers. And this particular customer, Funko, was ready to take their internet to the next level. They had SharePoint 2013 on premises, and they were really thinking about moving to the cloud. They had already started on a few workloads, and they were ready to move their intranet to the cloud, which for us was perfect timing to try this experiment, which really was more than just an experiment, but was the first time we did evidence like this. The MVPs literally swooped in, did their best consultant work to assess what they had, plan what they needed, and then actually build it. And that was in a 3-day period.
Right, so it's a little bit more like a reality makeover.
Yes, very much like a reality makeover. Maybe we call it the Enterprise TV Reality Makeover Show.
Well, the interesting thing about Swoop to me is, we obviously get connected with many of our really large enterprise customers. There's one I know that's kicking off right now, a 2 to 3 year employee engagement and digital transformation project. A lot of it's around reinventing their internet and their portals and lots of other things. And there's tremendous value to be gained from that, but it's like a slow-moving supertanker. Apart from the fact that I think it's a really cool frame for how to tell the story. We'll do it as a 3-day reality show. But to take it as a project, even if you're not filming it, to be like, let's get everyone committed and focused. Let's do a 3-day makeover for what's here. I think there's a lot of benefit in being able to connect people with quick wins, low-hanging fruit, tangible benefits that people get excited about and immediately start using, as opposed to things that we talk about today and sometime in 2020, they show up.
Well, the impetus of this is to do exactly that and cut to essentially a year later. So on the timeline of when we're releasing this podcast, effectively it was a year ago that we were on site filming with Funko. And that's when Ben, Sue, and Laura all flew in and hit the ground running and did what they did in 3 days. We'll have links to the show, of course. It's 5 episodes. It's essentially about 37 minutes of entertainment, complete and very engaging. And I'll give you the quick teaser is certainly they've continued to expand their intranet to other teams. So they use that blueprint, essentially the site designs, effectively helped them move that to other teams that said, yes, me next, please. They also did a lot more work with Power Apps. So they shared a lot with just also some of the things that they're working on, some interesting things coming from Funko that we'll let them tell you in their own words. But we'll start the episode first talking with Kurt and Scott. They're 2 of the folks that we worked closely with to get the show ready, to be on site with, and then, of course, work through. And Kurt is now the VP of IT, And Scott Christensen is his SharePoint consultant, who essentially is the one that makes it all happen and has really been enjoying the cloud. We then chat with Michelle Mauro, who's the technical project manager, and Trisha Cunningham, who's a senior business analyst. And those are the two folks that are the brains behind the site that they call the Shire, which essentially takes that very early phase acquisition of what their license is going to be, what the new projects are going to be and products, all the way through to the shelf and everybody involved in between to make sure that that tanker is pointed in the right direction even when it turns.
One of the things I'm also looking forward to that we get to talk about today is when you have these incubator lab projects where I've got lots of ideas coming, once I know what does work, how do I take it and standardize it and start to be able to roll it out to more and more people? I think templates are a really interesting thing, and that's why I'm also really excited we get to talk to Sean and Bob today.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job, and I will just give them a nice kudo because they certainly didn't know exactly when that ball was going to drop, but when we were on site, looped them in, and then they started working with Funko to get their requirements, again, like a consultant on the ground. They turned it around in such a quick time. And the other plug, just for the technology itself, at that time, we hadn't yet released site designs. So it was sort of, on the tanker ship as it was being built. At least the hull was done. So we were afloat. But it was really great to see them take hold. So, Chris, are you ready to be swooped, and re-swooped?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Pachoo!
So I think we'll call this section mini swoop or swoop short, swoop light. But we definitely love being here back at Funko, and we're just going to set a little bit of a time capsule. A lot of what we're going to be talking about is based on SharePoint Swoop, which you guys were really kind enough to let us in and tell your story of sort of tech behind the scenes. But if we go back to November 2017, that's when we technically were here filming with you all. First, let's talk about who you are. And I know, Kurt, you've gone through a little bit of role change as well. So introduce yourself and tell us what's been going on.
Sounds good. I'm Kurt Dicus. I run the IT department here. So before it was really just the infrastructure and dev team. Now it's really all of IT.
And Scott, tell us a little bit about who you are and obviously what's been going on since November.
I'm Scott Christensen, and I'm proud to work for Kurt now for about a year, I'd say. We're close to a year, maybe a little more than a year. And I'm the SharePoint administrator. Started out as a project manager, but it's a technical role. And we have done a lot in our first year. We have launched an intranet in simple form.
That's excellent.
Start there.
I hear through the grapevine, or maybe since we're here at Funko in the Grape Ape room, through the Grape Ape vine, that people call you the SharePoint Hulk. If I were to describe you right now, know a quarter why people say that. You're literally wearing an Incredible Hulk shirt, which is awesome.
It's true. It's totally true. I'll be honest, I think everybody needs a hero. And when I stepped into Funko, I realized that my hero was here. The very first time I walked in the door was a 10-foot version of the Funko Hulk in the store, right? Like, I just fell in love being here. But I think I got the role because I've been doing SharePoint since pre-site server. A long time, couple of decades, and I'm not a person to give up. This has been a very interesting role, both technical and organizationally, and I'm somebody that is going to see it through.
So before first question for Kurt, I have one follow-up. Has SharePoint ever made you that angry that you've turned green?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's true. But I'm happy to say that we've got our arms around it. We're in charge now.
That's right. We got Scott back now.
I was going to say, I see Scott here, but I think we've got the Bruce Banner version
We
of Scott.
do.
Kurt, again, we're going back into the capsule of November 2017. We were here with Ben, Laura, Sue, and obviously they came and helped you with a lot of stuff. Funko Space is the thing that I know we kind of landed on as a big thing, and there's a lot behind that. What has happened with Funko Space since November 2017? What have you all done, or maybe what have you asked your team to do?
So I would say if we go back to the starting point, we were at a place where we were trying to get our intranet sort of kicked off, right? It's a hard thing inside of a company, especially a company like ours that's growing so fast, moving so quickly, and I would say we ran into every normal problem that you would read about in every normal book about implementing a system, right? It's just hard to get momentum. So what you guys really did when you came in was helped us jumpstart that in a way that I don't think any other thing could have probably done as successfully. Really gave us the momentum to get this thing going. We landed Funko Space. We have an intranet. It's out there. We brought on one of the first big departments very soon after you guys left. That was our first big deliverable on our own. That has gone very successful as our HR department. And so a lot of key materials. So I would say what's gone on since then is more work with each of the departments. So by the time we're done, we need every department to have their site. And then the fun part has been, as we've met with each department, they've come up with projects, right? Things that Planner can help with, or things that we can do with Teams, or things we can do with other elements of O365. And so I think what's been fun for us is to not only see marching along for the departmental sites, but also being able to do quicker win projects for teams that they've needed, built along the way as well.
Yep.
So
And
it's been very successful balance between the two, I'd say.
At least part of what was going on in my mind was we hope we get a great case study out of it and a great example of what people are doing with the technology. But our give, we hoped, was that there would be this nice blueprint that would guide you from where you were, wherever that was. It could be immature to moderate, really mature to
We were
way
spinning.
ahead.
I'd say that's how I would describe. We were in spinning state.
And to hear the way you just described it was as if there was a blueprint. And the next team that came to you, or the next division, or the next project, or whatever, you kind of had a rinse and repeat model and a way to do additive without feeling overwhelmed.
That's exactly right.
And my assumption is now that you've got 3 or 4 or however many teams that are onboarded, now it's a little bit more like you're not only using more of your investment, but you're also making your job hopefully a lot easier.
Yeah, it takes less time. It's much more efficient now, right? Which we need. We need to borrow time because we got a lot of projects. So any place where we can save time on a project is very meaningful to us.
So one of the things that we went in the show beyond Funko space was your use of Power Apps. And I think from just hearing again through this great grapevine that I've been a little bit involved in, that you guys have done a little bit more around Power Apps and Flow. So maybe, Scott, you can tell us a little bit about some Power App orientated excellence you've done.
We've had a couple of good projects. First project is a Flow example where we had a team that didn't yet have access to the platform, and we needed a way to get them information out of a library. And Flow is so easy. Within a half hour, we'd pulled metadata, pulled the file object, and pushed a repeatable email, event that could send a report to someone that didn't have access to the item. Very, very easy to do, and it was something that we could do in a secure way to a secure audience in a way that we could track, and it was very easy to do in the platform. Not so as exciting as maybe some of our Power Apps, though, where I've got a case where a business case problem existed, where our old SharePoint environment, running SharePoint Foundation 2013, had a box replacement solution built upon it, where anyone inside Funko could go to this site and order a replacement box for their item. And we needed a way to turn that off so we could deprecate our old SharePoint environment. So ultimately what we did is lay out a fairly sophisticated list that gave us the ability to capture all of the same elements, but we didn't want to show our users everything. We didn't want to show them status of the order, for example. We just wanted a simple intake for them, but a sophisticated, workflow-centric solution that would have views appropriate for the right person looking at each order. And what we did is we met with our users of the system and designed a very simplistic Power App that would provide an easy intake for our users. And I'm very proud to say I'm a non-coder and was able to easily build this solution within a week, where we gather all the same field information, it intakes it, pushes it, sends notifications out, and then only shows the appropriate, view information, if you will, to, the appropriate people receiving the orders, right? So, and it was fun for us. And it really gave us the ability to kind of see for the first time, wow, we can really pull in all these different data sets, not just a SharePoint list, but a SQL database, other sources of information. And I think the light went on for Kurt and I. We began to see that we could really use pieces of this platform to build small subset tools for a very specific need, and then surface those on a communication site in a way that secured that object perfectly, right? Like just that group of people would see just those items. I didn't have to worry about embedding that in a site with a different model, for example. So the fact that we could modernize, brand, and build communication sites and solutions on top of that very, very quickly, I think gave us the foundation for where we're going in 2018.
Right? So, with a technical person, but not a developer. I think that's the big jump for us, is we have dev teams working on big dev projects, but if you can do this with technical folks that don't have to know how to write .NET code, the power of that is immense. And
with security in mind.
Right.
I was going to say, you're using it for
The
a
full
view perspective
ecosystem.
so that it's nice and secure. But I also think what you're doing, whether you are thinking about it or not, but I'm sure you are, is you're lowering the bar of entry in terms of the overwhelmed nature somebody might feel of 50 fields? No,
you
just
remember,
5.
They're asking questions about things now. They're thinking beyond the SharePoint site to what they can do to make their team feel more productive. It's pretty exciting time.
Planner's been a good one. Right?
Planner's a great example.
We've
right?
had multiple departments in the company that have seen Planner, and we've also been out evangelizing different parts of the platform. And then what's nice about that is it's easy to set up. It's easy for them to use. They're already using a product out in the street for it. And what we get to say is, but a software as a service solution doesn't have security, can't manage terminated. How are you guys in marketing managing terminated employees? Oh, you're not?
How do you manage external access to that data in a way that's fully governable, right?
Which we can do here if they're inside of our platform. We turn off disable when an employee goes away. We know everything goes away. We don't have to worry about each individual solution. So that's been a real powerful thing for me to talk to the executives about. Why is it so important not to just have employees come in and just stand up solutions everywhere they've ever done it out in the public versus using internal solutions?
They gave it a term, shadow IT, and
that's right.
Not to knock it, because certainly, smaller businesses or just people that need to get something done, if they don't have the right tools, get it done in the shadows. And
I'm one of those people. I'm a shadow kind of person. If I need to get something done in another area, I will go find a way.
Right. There's a time and a place for that.
There is. But if we can show them solutions that still meet their need but fit within our infrastructure, it's just better for everybody. And we're finding success with that.
So let's talk about maybe as a transition where you're going, maybe with that in mind, because it sounds like you're establishing a lot on the front end, but you're also going to get a lot of benefit on the back end in terms of where that Planner experience is. Do they always go to Planner, or are they doing it maybe in Teams?
Yeah.
Or you're building out these different pages and apps. Maybe that's in Teams or through SharePoint on a site. Can you talk about that integrated nature where you might be building it here, but a lot of your consumers will be consuming it in ways that maybe you wouldn't have
I think
thought
that's what
before?
Scott's talking about. I think this idea that the applications work so well together that what we know is we can start a solution over here in Planner, and then when they start asking 3 months from now the question of, you said it exactly, Scott, just can we take a subset of that and make it available over here? We're like, yeah, we can. That's because it's all within our ecosystem. We absolutely can easily get 3 fields out of 100 over here and make it available over here in a secure way. And so I think it's the more that we get these solutions out there, the more people are seeing, oh, wait, if I do it all in here, I really can get these used. And we're also a very big Power BI shop now, too. So much of this stuff, like Teams, can expose all of those in one interface. And so I think, the reusability across the platform and being able to expose pieces in other places that aren't normal is incredible for us. It's
with a consistent look and feel now,
there
too.
You go.
Right? And it's all rebrandable.
That's
We're
right.
very visual. Yeah. Everything has a pop or a color.
That's right.
So it's been fun for us to build things that are visually exciting and still very powerful. People look at it. Oh, look, I can go take care of that. People are excited about it when they see it.
One of your new visual elements that I'm aware of. So first, tell us, what is Wetmore Forest, and what have you done downstairs, which is where your store is?
Yep. So our new Funko HQ is on Wetmore Avenue in Everett, Washington. And so we have a new line of products that are, it's IP that we've created inside of Funko called Wetmore Forest. And it's a series of characters and locations and places and, everything you have to do when you build a new set of products and IP to go around it. And so we've taken one of the rooms in our retail store downstairs and rebuilt it as the Wetmore Forest. And it's, intermixed with our product and really cool videos. We got a video game we got to make, which was fun. And so,
just to assert a little bit here, if you have seen the show, SharePoint Swoop, you would have seen the inside of the store.
Yes.
If you haven't, to give it a first description from an outsider's perspective, larger than life. We're talking very colorful, very interactive, things that you want to take a selfie with. And I'm 47, so I had my camera out. Well, I wanted to wrap and just ask a little bit of, first, if you had anything you wanted to say to Sue Hanley, Laura Rogers, or Ben Yallen. And then my sort of follow-up to that is, have you actually had any contact with them or the want to call them? It sounds like you're pretty proficient on your own. But
yeah, they've been a huge help to us. So I'll start with thank you, because we've been able to keep those doors open, which has been, for me, and this includes you, Mark, and your team. So first off, thanks for that. I think each of them has been a little bit different. With Ben, naturally, we've used ShareGate. We've been migrating content into the platform. In all shapes and sizes. So this has been huge. And this includes file servers, not just other SharePoint sites, right? And we're naturally moving content around. So we're beginning to use those tools a whole lot more, including the reporting. With Sue, it was the extent of governance and IEA and all of the great material she gave us, we're beginning to look beyond how we did our first set of projects, and we're going to manage our next wave differently, in a more well-governed, well-thought-out way, so that when we approach those teams, the requirements are far more well-baked, and we're getting a better, maybe a little less technical resource to go get those for us, so that I don't have to do all the legwork, and I can spend my time, building the platform. Separately with Laura, thank you, Laura Rogers. We've had problems with Power Apps. I'm new to development. I'm happy to say that I've been able to do a lot of very sophisticated things with her support, including figuring out how to do some apps that didn't make the launch pad. Meaning we've tried things that didn't work, but she's been very accessible to us, and as I look at the three of them, they're all going to come back. They all loved being here, and we loved working with them.
So part of what I thought was that value of the MVP was they already know, sort of a lot of the problems maybe that you hit, whether it's news to them or not. They certainly probably have seen it before, but then they were able to turn it around on very specifically what were the issues. I know from the get-go it was a no-brainer, those three, but then seeing them in action and then knowing through what you've just shared that they're still involved. But I think it's also a testament to you all. You know the right questions to ask. You know when you hit a wall, or, as some of the things you've asked me, when things actually need to be adjusted, and that's what we call feedback. So certainly it's been a nice cyclical loop. But we do one thing at the very end. We know that the MVPs were the swooper stars, but you all are as well now gone through what you've gone through. Having the MVPs come and help certainly is a big part of how we were thinking about the project. But maybe just to give a little underpinnings of behind the scenes in the show, what was it like for you all to have Sue, Ben, and Laura come here at the state you were in November, or even for some of our pre-calls, and just describe how that all went?
You guys, it's so overwhelming to see those people show up on site. First off, I knew every one of those MVPs before, including yourself, Mark, before the show. So it was like having superheroes swoop in and help you for a 3-day period. There's no question. It came at a time when we hadn't shown anybody anything.
Right.
So it gave us credibility. It gave us the ability in a very rapid fashion to show everything we were capable of in maybe a longer window of time in a very short period of time. And we were able to show all of Funko what's coming for you. And it left a seed of excitement that everybody could maybe go back and look at that was published on your show, that as we eventually got there, it still resembles your show. So if
they were excited,
to your point, we've rebuilt what you've done many, many times over now, and we're excited about the continued repeat effort as we've gone from 30 sites to 80 sites. We're getting bigger, and I think for me, the ability to work with such incredible talent just gave us the ability to just reach out and reach far, and we did. We dreamt big, and we were able to scope it and manage it tightly. Even though we dreamt bigger than we were able to accomplish, we were still able to get something done that was tangible and reusable.
I agree. I'd say the breadth of it is what helped us. Is we could have probably gotten to each of the pieces over, take a few weeks in each of them, but to have somebody come in, and so like the truck app, right, to be able to see in one 3-day period, we can create a site, create the infrastructure behind it, create a power app, connect it together, and then go at the end of it. I remember Scott and I looking at each other and going, we can do this.
Sue says this a lot. It gave us a North Star, right, to go shoot towards. It really gave us direction, and that was ultimately what was the best help.
We do a segment at the very end of the show that is frequently asked questions. And so we want to get from you what your most frequently asked question is, whether it's related to SharePoint or how you project for the next pop sensation. Thank you for your time. Thanks for letting us come back and follow up with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. So we've just gone down to the main floor, and this is our secret entrance to the Wetmore Forest from the elevator side. Come on in. What you're seeing is the Wetmore Forest that we've just built inside our former classroom, full of noise, color, and excitement.
So we've got to look at a couple of the characters. Some of the characters that are in this room are bigger than me, and I'm just shy of 6 feet. Well, there's a ton of great characters: Snuggletooth, Bugsby, Wingnut, Butterhorn, and literally all throughout here you can actually hear the sounds of the forest. And if you look up, you can see mushrooms and bats and trees that are literally the whole size of the room. The room's what, about 30 feet tall?
I would put the room at 30 feet tall. We've got life-size versions of all of these toys all around us.
Now, can I find the Chester McFreckle? Is he here?
Sure, let's look.
Chester McFreckle is hiding in the corner. And he is about the size of a fourth grader. He's my favorite, if I remember the Wetmore characters. Chester McFreckle.
Everybody has something they love or can be a fan about, right? And I think that's what's exciting about Funko. You come here, you're going to find something to put a smile on your face for sure. Everybody can find something that will make them smile here.
So we are here with the Shire team, and the Shire team, as I know you from a while ago, still intact, still true?
Yes, it is. We've added one more member, but we're
excellent.
still the same team. I'm Michelle Mauro, and I'm the project manager on the Shire team.
And I am Trisha Cunningham, the business analyst that supports the Shire as well.
So let's talk about as you are growing. When I walk into any retail store, since obviously when we were here last, I now have a little bit more of an eye of seeing the Funko section. And I can think of 2 or 3 places that I've been with in the last couple months where it's just on top of it. You know, it's very timely and see things that are going. Talk about a little bit about what we knew back in November of 2017, which is essentially when SharePoint Swoop recorded, and that's what a lot of people know, and of course myself. Since then, how has the growth of Funko, how have you supported that growth through what the Shire team is doing?
Sure, yeah, to support all of the new ideas that the Funko team comes up with, we've had to create some new processes within our teams, new system functionalities, just to be able to support the end-to-end process of these exciting new items that Funko comes up with every day.
And
So we have a new, what we call the global link workflow, which allows us to work with companies we've acquired to get products into the system quickly, and that's been a great benefit so that products from Loungefly, in particular, the bags and purses, we're able to sell them through the Funko ERP system with this quick little plug-in we have. We also installed a notification system, which Trisha did a ton of work on, which notifies the product development users as well as the factory when it's their turn in the process to do some activity. So that's been a great benefit as well because we're no longer relying on email. They have an ability to just check the notifications, see what they have to do as a kind of a to-do list, and it gives them that good visibility.
And just as a refresher, since what I learned on the show, you guys are involved way, way back before you even think about what products you're going to create. You're just ahead of the curve thinking in terms of what movies are coming out, what TV shows are coming out.
Yep.
That is still all true?
Yes, that is true. And
So
we're
you're-
actually expanding that as well.
Excellent.
So we've always started from the kind of the conception of a product. We're actually going to take it back a little bit further to the even germination of the idea.
But you got the Shire Help Center?
Yes.
I think alive and well?
Oh, very much so. We produce a new video about every week.
And that's training.
And that's training videos, yes.
So what's the demand on that? Once you started to produce 1, 2, I don't know how often,
Sure.
what was the trend that you saw as far as creation and consumption?
I think that at first it was a little slow because it was new, but as new people got hired, we started doing more and more, and also really starting to create those videos for those really hot topics of new processes that were being rolled out and everything. So it's been really big to hand out to, that new capabilities and have it right there at everybody's hands, right at SharePoint. Just here's everything that we have. So.
And now we're finding that other teams are going to get in the video business. So we were asked by our infrastructure team to create a video about how to connect to the new Funko wireless network. And we created that video. And now we're being asked by our D365 team in the UK to create a series of videos on some of their new processes as well. So we're kind of branching out to other topics in our,
That's
in
great.
our videos.
And so that's Dynamics 365?
Yes, that's correct.
So you guys are broadening out anything 365. We've got you Dynamics 365, Office 365, and you're keeping the lights on.
Exactly.
365. That's awesome. So the other fun thing that I remember that, of course, very visual in the sense of you all, when you look at your personas, you look like a Funko character, a pop character.
Yes.
And that always was something that struck me as something, I'd like to be a pop character.
You can be. If you go to Pop Yourself, it's on our Funko
that's
website.
right, that's
you can
right.
make a pop figure of yourself.
I did make a note to do that last time.
Yeah,
So
it's fun.
I will do that. Is that pop myself. Is that how we should
That's
say
what
it?
it's called.
So there you made the Tech Freddies, the newsletters, and then I think you were literally the very first customer that used our news digest.
Yes.
So how's that going?
Yeah, so we were doing these news articles on a very regular basis. Any new system, any, important FYIs to the business. We were sending those out on a very regular business, but within the organization, we do a lot of email. So they were starting to get lost in the shuffle. So we have started to slow down the newsletters to maybe be once or twice a month, depending on what we have going on, and then just having more information in that single email. So I think that will hopefully not help prevent things getting lost in the shuffle.
And now the newsletters are kind of such a big hit that we're going to actually broaden it and not have it just focus on Shire development, but focus it on all Funko IT work. So we're going to kind of expand the newsletter a little bit to provide more guidance and information about what's going on in IT as a whole.
So we sometimes just balance what's the value of email, what's the value of a newsletter, and of course there's value in both and lots of different scenarios. Can you just kind of visually describe, or audibly describe, I guess, what a Tech Freddy looks like and why it's a news article better in its format than trying to do everything in email?
Well, first of all, it has pictures, and Funko runs itself on pictures. If it's a visual, you're going to get someone's attention. Otherwise, people just ignore it. And so I think what's nice is when you get the Tech Freddy in your email box, is you have that first part when it opens up at the top, which is a summary of what's going to happen. So if you're someone who's super busy, you don't know if it's going to be right for you or not this month, you can read that first paragraph and understand if there's an article or two that you care about. And then as you flow down, it's more of this traditional newsletter where you have a picture that we create, and we have some sort of logic about the pictures that we create, and then there's a paragraph, which is the beginning of the news article. And we always make sure to write to that paragraph, kind of like old school journalism, where you put the most important stuff up front, so that if they do want to learn more or see a video or get more information, they can click on that and takes them to the news article, the fully expanded version, with a video if we created a video for that, or with any visuals, screenshots, that kind of stuff as well. So the news, so that we kind of provide them two versions of the digest. One's a short little paragraph, what's going on. The second is a longer intros to all the different articles, and then if they want to learn more, they can click. So it gives them a benefit over rather than putting all that documentation in one email, they have a nice reference. And because it lives in the Shire Help satellite that we created, they can go back and find that stuff either by the topic itself, like integration or signing on, or they can go find that specific newsletter article and read more about it, in the future if they want to go back and refresh themselves.
Sometimes we get that question of why wouldn't I just send it as an email, or vice versa. Why would I send it as an email? And I think part of that value is, imagine, especially as you guys are growing, new people sign up, come on board, they may have a question or two, they'll go ask somebody, but as they get used to going to the Shire Help Center, they can just search and find.
Right.
And if they weren't a part of that email chain originally, then that's nowhere to be found. But to be able to go and look for the news article in the archive, especially the way that you organize it, very easy to find. Since November 2017, we know you're not just sitting still and not just doing the same old thing. What's something new that you are leveraging, sort of the systems of how you learned it back in November, or how you at least continued back in November?
Funko is eternally trying to push out new products and kind of meeting the zeitgeist of what people really think is cool. And one thing that we have taken on is Funko O's, which is a new cereal product. And it's being sold in specialty retailers, and it's not in grocery shelf stores. And what's kind of cool is that you bring in a whole bunch of new manufacturing processes. And so we're using Visio to document that. We're working between the ERP teams and the product development teams and the marketing teams, licensing teams, to make sure that all the pieces come together to create this new product. So it's kind of definitely touches every different part of us, and I think that we're much better, we're much more organized and ready to kind of attack that kind of stuff.
So are you all ready for Funko to be at the forefront of breakfast all across the world?
And every box does come with a character inside, so you can get Freddy Funko O's down in the store today if you wanted to.
I bet those taste good. Awesome. Well, I would love to try some. Well, thank you for your time.
Yes.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
It is time to go behind the scenes. So we've got a few folks here that are pretty expert in pretty much anything they do. I've seen these guys do a lot over the years. I want to introduce them. We've got in the studio Sean Squires. Sean, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I know you're on the PM side and the engineering, doing lots of stuff. You sometimes tackle the tough stuff, but put it in your own words. Who are you? Title? What do you do? How'd you get here?
Wow. Good morning, Mark. Yeah, thanks. So I'm Sean Squires. I am a PM, a program manager here at Microsoft on the SharePoint Experiences team. So I've had the privilege the last couple of years of really helping to rebuild SharePoint, primarily in the team site space, so working on site provisioning, the new modern team site template and a lot of pieces of that. And then the stuff we're going to talk about today around the extensibility of that.
Excellent. So you've been a part of the team that's hitting refresh. Jeff Teeper's words.
Yep.
CVP, you guys all work under him. So also with us is Bob German. Bob, you've got maybe 10 titles. I always think of you as architect extraordinaire, but I don't want to oversell, undersell.
Thanks. You're too kind. In fact, I have a friend who designs buildings.
Oh, nice.
And I told him about all the different architect titles I've had, and I asked him what he says, and he says that he's a real architect.
Ooh. How many years did it take to get over that one?
Yeah. Not too. I think he had it. He's designed some really cool buildings. I started with Site Server 3.0 before, so
you're dating
this isn't
yourself.
the first. Yeah, I know. This is not the first refresh that I've seen, although it's certainly the most fun. So I work in the One Commercial Partner team for the U.S. So what we do is we help system integrators and ISVs and all kinds of partners who are managed in the U.S. to be successful with, in my case, Office 365. And so there's a whole team of us who focus on modern workplace. And I am one of 2 developer types in that team. So, I work with ISVs who want to customize the product or system integrators who want to add value by tailoring the product to their clients' needs. And so it's really a lot of fun. I get to work with a lot of really smart and interesting people on really fascinating projects. So I absolutely love this new job.
Well, that's architect enough for me. And because I know you have built a lot of sites, that's pretty close to what other people might reference of what an architect would do.
Yeah, except for my friend.
But I think in this segment, I think of you guys as both developer and IT's best friends. And I like to also think about some of what the topic that we're going to dive into is you guys are the governors. You're really IT's best friend of how people can get what they need, but do it in a structured, programmatic fashion. So as you know, we caught up with Funko really almost about a year later after we did SharePoint Swoop. And we talked to Kurt Dicus and Scott Christensen. And we learned everything that they were doing with Swoop since we had filmed the show, what they're doing with team sites, communication sites, hub sites. They're actually now using more of the mobile app. And of course, they're starting to use more and more of the kind of IT-friendly tech, site designs and site scripts. Do you like site scripts or site scripting?
Oh, I like site scripts, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a noun. It's a lowercase noun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk the action here in studio, but we'll call it by its noun name.
All right. Very
Okay.
good.
So we'll stick with site scripts. What are site scripts and site designs? Sean, we'll start there. And then, Bob, maybe we can take it to you and how we got looped into Funko and what you did for them.
Wonderful. So what am I talking about? Site designs and site scripts. This is really what we often refer to in the hallways as modern site templating. It's really a new approach to automating the configuration of SharePoint sites in a smarter way, we'd like to think, than the way we've done it in the past. There's a long history, Bob's probably very familiar with this, of how to build site definitions and website templates and things like this. And there's lots of ways to configure SharePoint sites in the past, but in much the same way that a template is a way to construct the settings and features of a site or anything that you would be templating, site designs work the same way. It allows for a consistent programmatic configuration of a SharePoint site. And what's different about site designs is we really borrowed from a concept that had been evangelized by the Patterns and Practices community, which is just a phenomenal partnership between Microsoft and a lot of our MVPs and people out in the field and people just really using the product. And one of the things that they had done is a fantastic community effort was to build an engine that allowed for the programmatic configuration of a site asynchronously, so after the site's been created. And that was really what we looked at as a model for how we wanted to make site designs work. So site designs use site scripts to essentially do that programmatic configuration after the site's created. And what's powerful about this is it gives us the ability to really provide a more elegant upgrade and update story for our customers, because then they can continue to accrue all the benefits that we put into the product itself, and then they can use these scripts and these site designs to update and pick up all those changes plus whatever changes they need for their business processes.
So with a little bit of the what is it, Bob, when you got drawn into SharePoint Swoop, the scenario that Funko was trying to do, how would you encapsulate that?
I assume everyone listening has watched the series. I couldn't stop watching, so I ended up binge watching the whole set, and it was a lot of fun. So, basically it's the reality show where they do the makeover but it's about time somebody did a makeover of something virtual and modern instead of, somebody's old house or something. So that was the deal, and there were 3 great MVPs who came in to do the work, and they did a whole bunch of things. One of the things they did was a department site. So they were really only there for 3 days, and I think what they accomplished in that short time was quite phenomenal.
I agree.
So they obviously couldn't go and talk to every department in Funko and build a department site for every department in 3 days. So they focused on one department, which was the R&D group, who were very forward-looking and ready to help. And they came up with a really nice, when I say design, I don't mean like a visual design necessarily. It was, although there was web parts and things, but they came up with an information architecture and a page layout and a set of web parts and scenarios and everything that went with that to make the R&D department more successful and more productive. The problem was, how do they reuse that?
Right.
Unfortunately, they probably couldn't just, have another SharePoint swoop for every department. So that's where the site designs and site scripts came in. What I got to do was, as Sean said, I got in real early on this, which was very exciting. And I thank Sean and Vesa as well for helping bail me out as I was trying to figure stuff out. So now they can push a button and get a new department site. And it's consistent. Everybody knows how it works. If they go from one department to another, they don't have to relearn how to do it. All of the good thinking that went in is mostly applicable throughout the company, so they can reuse all of that. So that was really the...
Yeah, I think one of the key things that you mentioned was, okay, you worked with one specific team, and I think behind them obviously was the IT team that then supports all the different business units or the different project teams or whomever, and they've got a number. They're not a huge company. They're about 600 people, but they've got a massive amount of different departments, and so they wanted to standardize. So again, the key thing you said was got it for that one group, but the IT team then wants to replicate that for anybody and everybody in the same way so that they're not driving
the IT
themselves
team
crazy.
wants consistency, and the other departments are probably going to get jealous and want their own site. So it solves both problems.
But I think the benefit of site designs is it applies it, but then you still can configure the site in terms of if a different team wanted to highlight a video or if they wanted to put a Power BI dashboard. There's no limits to what they can do then once they get their site.
No, in many ways, what's awesome about this is it really just facilitates that. When Bob was recounting the specifics of the project, is it also doesn't require everybody to be a SharePoint expert. So for some folks, they just want to be able to use the product. Great, I don't need to know how to configure the site. I just want to be able to be productive and get started. But then for folks who, like you said, want to highlight certain content or make some changes that are unique for their business process or their department, they still have the full power of SharePoint at their disposal.
Right. And another cool thing about site designs and scripts over the old templating system is that it used to be if you created a template and you made a site out of that template, you could modify the site after that. But if you modified the template, that was it. The next new site would get the modifications, but what about the 100 sites that I already created, right?
So let me throw a scenario in there for your friend, the architect. After he builds a building, can he change level 12 to be level 6?
No, that's why we call it software.
So that's why I think you're the real architect. You can go virtual or physical.
Boy.
I like that.
Wait till he hears this one. Wow.
So I think just to tie off a little bit on Funko, because we certainly have highlighted a lot of what they're doing, and I think it's very interesting what they did with site design, site scripts. For the end user, the ultimate goal is they go to create site from SharePoint Home. They choose the design that's available to them. There may be multiple designs that they've created, but if let's say there's the standard team template that they've done, team design, they choose it, and then automatically we'll give them the site that they need in the way that's governable. That's why you guys are the governors.
I like that.
By IT. And hopefully it saves them just a ton of time. So they don't have to structure their page. They don't have to put in their list columns. Like if you were to rattle off, what are the couple of things people can do that are just key with site scripts?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a fantastic question because that's really where Funko's involvement early on and then Bob's work with them was instrumental, and just really a lot of the work was laying the foundation for the new capability. But then really it's around giving the users a lot of those scripted capabilities. That's where the power of the site script actions come into play. those actions can do everything from setting the theme to adding people to specific SharePoint roles to building lists and libraries and doing all the things to configure them, adding columns, creating views. You can even manipulate the site navigation. Now, one of the things that we knew would require a little bit more work and also was instrumental in the Funko project is a lot of folks want to be able to maybe configure a web part page and put specific web parts on there. And there's a lot to do that, and our APIs need to get a little bit more mature before we can do that, but that's very much in the roadmap. But one of the things that we enabled very early on was the ability to use Microsoft Flow as a way to call custom solutions. So 2 benefits there. One is folks who are familiar with PnP, they can use existing solutions or use the capabilities that are available there, and then essentially bootstrap in with our native capabilities and do all the things that we can't do yet. So we essentially gave them a way to break glass outside of the product and do all the things that might be very custom or things we just can't support natively in the product.
And I think that's a lot of what, again, our architect over here did, some gymnastics to get some things before they were ready or baked.
That's right.
And when I think of what you did with PnP, and just to be clear, that's the Patterns and Practices team. And you mentioned Vesa Javoven, who is basically the lead there. Yep. But a lot of ability to contribute to that.
It's rare that any kind of templating for any product is going to get 100%, right?
Right.
So the reality is there's programming interfaces for everything already. And there's also a migration story here. Because if I had built Patterns and Practices, PowerShell is usually the big hammer for that nail, you know. And if you had written a bunch of PnP PowerShell, say, to lay out a page, you can reuse that. So not only can you use that to extend into where maybe they haven't added the action that you want, but it's also a migration path. Maybe you have some PowerShell scripts that you were using to set up your sites according to the way the PnP people told you to do it 2 years ago, which is still a good way. Now you can actually do a gradual migration. So you could take that script and just run it from the flow at the end of your site script.
Yeah.
And then you could say, well, let's take these 2 actions and move them into the site script, where they'll run faster. And then slowly over time, you can migrate it. Or if you have something maybe on-prem, where we don't have site scripts yet anyway, right? I can still reuse all my work.
That's right. If I may, Bob is highlighting a really important point here because one of the things with folks who have built PnP solutions is they will often build their own interface. So now we're getting into site creation and the whole provisioning flow where they would have to build that custom override experience, that solution where you're going to do all those things to call that PnP experience, that custom solution. But now what we can do is we can actually give them a hook in the product's self-site creation experience. So now they can just plug into that flow. They don't have to build all of that. It's now available in the product. So some customers, to Bob's point about it, maybe they have a gradual migration. It might be just, I'm going to have a site script with 1 action. It's going to use Flow to call out to my custom solution. But for the rest of the experience, I'm now using the product and taking advantage of the speed and the native experience and just the easier format that's available to them.
So if I understood that correctly, Bob is writing the playbook and you're reading it.
Yeah.
And then you're making it real for the masses.
There you go.
The beauty of it, I think, is, you as a developer and other developers, certainly as you evangelize, can actually do this and it actually makes sense in a durable way.
Right.
So certainly for the end user, once they go to create the site, there's a lot that might be happening behind the scenes. But to actually make that happen is not rocket science by the time that it's available in production. And it's very powerful in a way that will give them what they need. And my favorite part about all this tech is even after I provision the site, let's say IT changes and says, we need an extra column in all of our sites.
That's right.
Tell me how you would have done that in the past. And now with this technology, is it a lot easier?
Okay, so in the past, I would have written a PowerShell script that would have gone through every site and looked for that list, looked to see if the new column was there, and then added the column. If it goofed up and it ran and tried to add the column a second time, it would fail because it was not what they call item potent. You couldn't run it twice and get the same result, right? You add the 6th floor to the house, and then you try to add the 6th floor again, it says, 6th floor already exists.
So if we take our Jetsons mobile to the future, or to the now. Future is now.
Right. So as I mentioned, We've had a lot of site templating models and frameworks in the past. One of the things we did was, as Bob mentioned, we made sure that site designs and site scripts were idempotent so they can be re-executed. So how I would do this now is I would say, great, I need a new column. I'm going to go and actually write a very simple PowerShell command to add that column to my site script. Now I can go and actually re-execute that. And that's the part we're still making a little bit easier is let's find all those sites that have previously been provisioned. But if you had that list, or if you wanted to go and query and get that list, you can then run that script and it would actually execute and add that column.
And at points of failure or pause, it would just keep retrying.
It would either retry or just move on. Yeah.
And it's not even considered a failure. It's more like, this is the way I want. Instead of saying, here's a step, it's like, here's how it should be.
Yeah.
And then the site, then all of Sean's good work and his team's good work, just make sure that it is the way it's supposed to be.
Okay. So if the future is now, Sean, what is next?
Here's how I would describe what is next. What is next boils down to a couple things. One, as we've talked about, we're continually expanding the dictionary, if you will, of script actions so that you can do more and more things with a site script via a site design. The other thing we want to do is just make it easier. Right now it still is very much a citizen dev story, but there's so many scenarios and potential scenarios that we see site designs really filling the gap for that we want to make sure that they're available for even non-SharePoint administrators to not only create, but then to actually implement. So a great story there that we have just recently announced, thank you with your help, is hub site designs. So for those of you who are familiar listening about hub sites, which we announced at last year's Ignite and then showed some improvements that we've made at this year's SharePoint conference, one of the things we also shared was you can now attach a site design to a hub site. So now when a site joins a hub, you can have that site design get executed on join. That's very powerful because now you can start to do things not just, when you join a hub site, you get the theme and you get a relationship for the upgrading of news and things like this, but you can actually start doing configurations on those joined sites for consistency or for workflow or maybe to add certain users to those sites so that they can help administrate them.
So even if the site was originally in some form of governance specific to the general business,
right,
now when it joins a hub site, which might be a division of the company, they might have some additional governance or policies that they want to apply or just some specifics of how they want to express the site when people come to work with it.
Exactly.
That's what you're talking about.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then one of the things that we just announced at Ignite is we're making it much easier to actually create site scripts. What you used to have to do and what you still can do, it's still very powerful, is you actually have to write a JSON file, which uses the site script schema and writes these actions to go and do all those programmatic configurations. That's the file, if you will, the script that the site design is going to execute and what gets done to your site. Well, what if I were to tell you that now you can actually just go and use the SharePoint UI, make the site that you want, and then generate a site script from that? That's very powerful.
That's very powerful. And I know this is not news to you now, Bob, but with that news, when you think about how you've created a site design, maybe for the one with Funko, or maybe since then when it's gotten a little bit more mature, what does that mean from a time saving?
I think it's going to save everyone a lot of time, and it's going to remove bottlenecks, because if you have to get that specialist involved, that's when things tend to get pushed to the back burner or not happen. So by empowering more people to create and update their site designs and scripts, that's kind of, in a way, the holy grail that we all thought of when we saw that little link that's no longer in SharePoint Online, save site as template. Right? And there were all kinds of problems with it. And don't get me started on, right, because if you did it in the wrong way or whatever, things would break. It was very brittle. But it doesn't have to exactly work that way either. But just allowing the power users to go in and update it is going to be a really big plus.
Yeah.
With an evangelist hat, kind of the last thing to talk about here is how do customers and partners, I know you focus a lot on partners, but certainly customers as well, how can they get involved?
Well, there's a lot of great documentation, and I'll put in a couple of plugs for some of this. Like, for instance, the Funko department site. You can have a Funko department site at your company.
Ooh.
Okay? I mean, you'll have to go get the Funko logos and other fun branded things yourself. But basically, the work that I did there with Sean's help actually is now up on the sample site. So there's a site, which we'll put in the show notes, with samples of
all these different site designs that you can just start from. And then there's good documentation. Sean has a blog article. I have a blog article specific to Funko. So pick any one of those. They all link to each other and just follow it through and get started. It's really not hard to build these things and get started.
Absolutely.
So we've got easy ways for people to realize what they are, what's new, what's different from templates of the past and designs now of the future going forward. Obviously, we'll have everything that you just said as links in the show notes. And I also think just at our trade shows, whether you're at a local or a big event, I see always a session on how to use site scripts, how to use site designs, the benefits, obviously, but then the real how-to, I think, is what's the value there. So tons of ways to get involved, and certainly for partners, tons of ways for them to take advantage of it to make their lives easier.
Yeah, well, a lot of times this will be a partner activity. I mean, it's not the technical information and all the articles and resources would work the same for a partner or a customer. But the reality is that, a lot of customers, their competency is not computers. And so they're hiring a system integrator or someone like that to come in. And so in that case, it'll be the partner probably.
Awesome.
Doing that.
So people always want to hear from you guys. I know that when you have sessions, people attend. You usually have standing room only. Your blogs obviously get a lot of traction. Sean, you're tweeting before I put out the blog sometimes, which is kind of fun. But how do people keep up with you? Sean, on Twitter, where you blog, what do you do?
Yeah, so I work with you, obviously, on the tech community and try and stay engaged there, not just in the blog posts that we put out, but also in the discussions that happen around those blog posts. I've become a fan of Twitter as a wonderful mechanism to stay in touch with the community, and people have been just very responsive and telling me their scenarios, asking their questions, and it's been a great forum.
And you really stand on top of the Twitter mountain and yell, "I am Sean Squires."
I do. Yes.
That's your handle.
That is my handle. Sean Squires was taken.
Hey, I love it. I love typing it out. I'm like, that's right, I'm going to mention him because it's just fun. And Bob, how do people follow you? I know blog,
Well, it's funny,
Twitter?
Bob German was also taken. I had to come up with something, and I decided instead of putting a number at the end, I'd put it in the middle, so it's Bob 1 German.
Yeah.
Because I like to think that I'm the number 1 Bob German. That's the other Bob Germans I'll probably all write in now. So anyway, that's both my Twitter and my blog. So the Twitter is at Bob1German, and I'm pretty good at staying on top of tweeting. I try to tweet everything that's kind of going on in the space. And also, I get to blog sometimes on Tech Community, or I have an MSDN blog. I also just have a personal blog, and I put everything on the personal blog. So there's always one place where you can see it if you are in doubt, and that's just bob1german.com. So
we'll put all those links in the show notes, and certainly appreciate you guys coming. I hope you will stick around. We do a segment at the end of the show that is the frequently asked questions, and something tells me you guys get cornered, whether it's in the virtual world or in the real world with questions. So we'd love to hear what your most common question is, and of course, the answer that you give. But before we get there, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's turn our attention to FAQs. This is one of my favorite sections of the episodes, and it's where we get to hear what is the most frequently asked question of our subject matter experts and our guests, and of course get their expert answer. So I know, obviously, you, Bob, get a ton of questions, and you, I've seen, provide a ton of answers. But recently, what's the most common thing that people are asking and what you're telling them?
Yeah, so I'm going to pick one from my work with partners, and it's more of a class of questions than an exact question because it always comes through as some very, very specific ask. So, there were 2 schools of thought about SharePoint. One was
Only 2?
Well, there's many spectrums, but in this particular one, there were those who said never customize it because you'll just land in a world of pain, and that was partly because of the way that the customization was designed. I won't totally explore that now, but this has been improved. And the other is, no, let's customize it completely. Let's make it look, and then they go hire artists before they even start building. And the artist has no idea what SharePoint looks like and came up with something completely different. So, with modern SharePoint, the customization story is much better. In my view, it's more stable, it's less brittle. But in order to get that and also allow the platform to keep evolving, there are some guardrails. So every part of the page is configurable. Some parts are also customizable with code where you can make it look like anything you want. So the questions, might be, how do I change navigation, or how do I completely change the header? Or they'll show me a picture and say, how do I make it look like this? And unfortunately, the answer is often you can't do that with modern SharePoint. So if you don't mind me plugging, because my most frequently asked questions I usually write about. I just recently posted a blog article about this.
Please.
That kind of walks you through all the different parts of the page. So for instance, the suite bar at the top, you can configure that, but you can't customize it. Below that, you would have your SharePoint framework header extension placeholder where you can put anything your heart desires, right? Because you can program that with code in SharePoint framework. That's definitely my biggest asked question these days. And I think the answer is a good one, but it just requires a little bit of reframing and maybe a little bit of education of the design community to say, you know what? Yeah, you can do amazing things with this, and you can totally engage your employees and bring them in and get them excited about your brand. But you can't just start from anything that you could possibly imagine and make it look like that, which kind of goes back to SharePoint 2007 when they merged in Content Management Server, which was a web content management system. So it was supposed to be for public-facing websites.
I think it's very important to know what the guardrails are. And I think it's really important, as you said, before you pick up the paintbrush and before, of course, I think you sell it to the business, here's what we're going to do, understand what you can do, and know that it's not so limiting. There's reasoning behind, some of the ways that we can make the service more reliable throughout the years, not just that month, but throughout the years. But then they should feel free to paint the brush in the ways that they can configure and customize, again, with the right guidance and understanding.
Yeah. And then I would just add, that's a fantastic set of questions. Putting my product group hat on, I would say that then it's really important. We want to understand from the community what of those configurations and customizations matter the most, because those are the ones that we want to prioritize and make sure that we give them the right script actions or, feature capabilities in the product to actually configure and set those things.
Awesome.
Great. Well, I'll send you a laundry list.
Please.
So my frequently asked question is, who are these guys behind the scenes? Who are the brains behind SharePoint? And I just say Bob and Sean. They're the governors.
The governors.
They're the brains. That's my FAQ. We're out. This mic can't drop, but I'll drop it anyway. Sean, we turn to you. What is your most frequently asked question? And as the brilliance comes out of your mouth through your brain, what do you tell them?
Wow. So I get a lot of great questions, especially in the dev community calls and on Twitter. And I would have to say, Mark, that's one of the ones that seems to come up quite a bit, and I appreciate people keep asking about this, is we've done a lot of investments in making it really easy to build one of the core components of SharePoint, lists and libraries, and build these really powerful automated schemas with content types, with views and things like this. Unfortunately, there are some data types that we just don't support yet, like managed metadata. And so that's one that we're working on. That is probably one of the more common questions. I would say another one is we have these awesome new modern site pages, and people, as much as they love our templates, as much as we love our templates, people would like to be able to swap out that homepage with their own web part configurations or their own custom apps. And we definitely have it in mind to make it so that you can actually build a site design that will set that homepage. We've illustrated that, and for those of you who are familiar with PnP, you can do that today with your own custom solution and the PnP provisioning engine and Azure and Microsoft Flow. All the technology is there to do that, but it's tough. It's a little bit harder. We want to make it easier for folks.
And it's a great example if you want to see sort of the interim and where we're headed. You mentioned PnP. They have now, I think what you're hinting at is the new SharePoint Starter Kit.
Yes.
And we actually just deployed that for a session that I was running just a bit in the SharePoint Fest Seattle. And Vesa was kind enough to help me get the SharePoint Starter Kit all set up. And it absolutely uses site design site scripts to accelerate just the delivery of the kit.
That's right.
But then in use, I actually was just playing around with it and didn't realize that if I went to go create a new site, that he had a site that's already configurable by the site design, but it also automatically joined it to the hub, which was the whole PnP portal that gets deployed in the kit.
That's right.
So it was a round trip, and I just didn't realize, I talked about shipping that, but I hadn't really played with it in depth. But it's exactly what you're talking about. It's this kind of way to learn and showcase what's possible, and it's also a little step into the future. So lots of things are going to be possible.
Absolutely. I'm glad you made that plug because I'm really excited about the kit and the capabilities that we're able to put in there to really help people not only learn about the features, but then to implement them and start to play with them and understand how they can be used.
Gotcha. So we'll definitely put a link to the SharePoint Starter Kit. It's a great kit. It's really feature-rich, too. That's the part that I was kind of surprised about. I'd written about it a couple times, but hands-on, it's a ton there.
Now, Mark, despite all your popping around for Funko and Swoop, you've had time to listen to a few questions yourself.
Yeah, I certainly get a lot of questions on SharePoint and what we're doing in the cloud with the intranet. But for this particular episode, and actually fairly recently, since we've been doing a little bit more catching up with Funko work, we did a recent article with the Transform blog. So there's been a little bit of renewed interest since when we last launched the show. And always the common question that I get is, did they really do all of that in just 3 days? And the answer is absolutely. We really only had Laura, Sue, and Ben for those 3 days. And to be honest, the impact of having a film crew on site at a real customer's while they really are trying to get work done was really stretching the boundaries. So we wanted to confine it, and we also wanted to really target so that they got what they needed, because Funko had requests. We'd like to do X, Y, and Z while you're here. And of course, we had our asks of if we could do it in this way so that we could record specifically. But when they hit the ground, they did a great planning session with Sue. Then they really got to some real work in that same afternoon. And then all three of them were just on the ground meeting with the different Funko people. And in 3 days, they really created a new hub site with a couple of sites underneath it, a real power app, and a refreshed site design that they use now for their team sites for each team. There is some reality, of course, that there was a little prep going into it, and there was a little bit follow-up afterwards. But what you see and what was recorded is what they really did in 3 days. We didn't record outside of that 3 days. Chris, beyond Funko, beyond the world, what is your most frequently asked question these days?
So these days, I'm asked a lot to explain what are we doing for business process in Office 365. And the very quick answer is there are things that we're using Flow for which are part of the service, which we've spoken about before. Things like how do I get approval on a document? How do I get approval on connecting a site to a hub? We also give you patterns and templates so you can start building your own, customizing them not to match our processes, but to match your business processes. But the one I get the most questions about is how do I start thinking way outside of the box and being able to bring in cognitive services? One of the things that's great about SharePoint is it's a good home for visual content, for images. But being able to have that same sort of exact precision for how you hone in on particular objects in there requires cognitive services and being able to build a model. But that model building is not some esoteric PhD level tool set. It's a very friendly website. If you go to customvision.ai, if you are used to a consumer service like a Picasso or an Instagram, you just upload pictures, you tag them, say build a model, and the cloud starts learning from the way that I tag things, how to tag the next couple of pictures that I bring along. And it's pretty easy then to wire it back into your SharePoint libraries and use it to start making intelligent detection and routing decisions.
So what are a couple of examples? Let's say you uploaded 3 pictures, something that you maybe tried yourself or you know that it does. I upload a few pictures and then what happens? I know you just described maybe what you uploaded and then what the machine spit out.
Well, one example is we've built a cloud model to help recognize when tomatoes are ripe and tomato plants to be able to use in the lab so that research scientists can take a large number of photos of different samples along the way and then use the cloud to recognize these are ripe tomatoes, we probably need to go in and sample them. Or if you're in the domestic side, these are ripe tomatoes, I need to go in and eat them.
I'm feeling a Greek salad coming along very nicely.
We're also using it to compare target visuals versus actual visuals, by which I mean people who are setting up retail displays. And is something missing? Well, you can actually pretty quickly tell, is something missing from this display, and set a flag and make sure someone goes and addresses that.
Very cool. Very cool. Really nice to see, what is sometimes a hard media to draw from, but to have that be applied. And in our world, that just means more delicious metadata, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we're moving from the world of food to the world of fun. So our FAQs with Funko took place up at their headquarters with Kurt and Scott. And our very own pop bobblehead, Mark Cashman, sat down with them to get their answers.
It sounds like you've got a great joint FAQ.
Yeah.
So what's the FAQ, and Scott, how do you answer it, and Kurt, how do you answer it? What's your most common question?
My most common question is, when do I get my site? Right now. It's true. I've built enough, and it's been seen enough that there are places and the organization's grown obviously since I started. So we've got teams that just are still waiting, and it's because we're going to do a good job by them. We're not just going to go lay down a site and walk away. So having said that, that is still my most prevalent question. It's not what is SharePoint anymore. Yeah. I'll tell you that. And that's, for me as a SharePoint guy, that's a huge win. What is the SharePoint? If I ever hear that, I get that's gone. People know what SharePoint is at Funko now.
Mm-hmm. But your approach as an IT person who's supporting those teams is not just a get started and off you go. It's a get you started right, check back in, check back in.
Oh, it's constant connectivity back to the site owners. They all buy me coffee. Let's put it that way, right? Like, I'm here to help them. I'm here to help them be successful, but I don't own their site. Yeah. They do. So I empower them to tell me what they need their site to do. I can't help them if they don't tell me. So we're doing a much better job in 2018 of actually asking the right questions before we just go start building sites and solutions on those.
And I would say rather than just this idea of even checking back in, it's doing it with them. That's the difference in approach.
So I mean, if somebody asks you, is SharePoint done? I actually have a session that I run that's SharePoint, the modern intranet from start to never finished. Mm-hmm. And the obvious being is business is never done. Right. But if somebody were to ask you that frequently asked question, are you done with your SharePoint, or is SharePoint done? What would you say?
So that's when I say that we treat SharePoint as a platform. So we think about it much more like a business platform versus the old style SharePoint as an intranet. Our platform is never done because all the business problems are never done. So that's how the answer comes out is we're not building the old intranet sites, and so it won't be like that. Done is, do you have any more business problems? Then we're not done. Until you say, no, I am out of business problems, we're not done with our platform.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your FAQs. Thank you for your time. Yeah. And I hope that you guys continue to grow beyond, both in angry fashion planned through, you got to have the cult come out every once in a while.
That's right.
And certainly congratulations to you for moving up into the new role and taking it on. It sounds like in stride. So that's great.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for your help.
Funko sounds like a lot of fun. I'm sure there's some more stuff you've learned there that you'd love to share with the audience.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Two things, really. One is just a thing that anybody and everybody can do, and I've done it, and it's really fun, and I'm going to put this out there when we start tweeting about this episode. You can actually go and make a pop of yourself. The pops are those figurines, some of them with the bobbleheads, but they represent essentially these characters from all these great movies. Well, now you can do it of yourself. So you go in and you effectively, like doing Mr. Potato Head of the past, build, what are your eyebrows? What are your eyes? Is this your smile? Do you have a beard? What's your hair look like? And do all that. And you can choose all your accessories, cats, dogs, bracelets, necklaces, what clothes, all that stuff. So it's really fun to do. We'll put a link in the show. And again, like we mentioned earlier, all of the people at Funko actually have already popped themselves, and those are their profile pictures. But you too can do a pop of yourself. There's a link that Funko has created and made for us to pop yourself. We'll put that in the show notes.
So these are images, or these are actual dolls?
The output is actually an image, just a JPEG. So if you wanted to tweet about it or put it onto your phone as your profile or something like that, or use it in Instagram or something. But it's really fun to build, but then of course it's most fun to share. And if you do it to what you look like, I'll be honest, it looks a little bit like me with glasses, a beard, and I have a cat, so I put a cat at my feet.
Because I'm in the process of renewing my ski pass. And I just uploaded my official Microsoft headshot, which looks weird on the mountain.
Boring. Pop yourself, Chris.
I will.
And ski forever. So the second thing we wanted to share was actually a new article that was coming out from another team here at Microsoft that does effectively customer stories year-round. So they did their own journalism, went up to Funko, took some pictures of the folks that they talked to, and wrote up a really nice article about Funko, primarily about the company, and related it back to the SharePoint Swoop, the show that we put on. So there's a really nice article out on the Transform blog. When that's available, we'll have it in the show notes. Get a really nice look at what Funko does on a day-to-day basis beyond SharePoint Swoop.
As always on the Intro Zone, we want to make sure you're staying in touch with the latest news and events going on around the community. One of the best places to learn about it is with SharePoint Saturday. We'd encourage you to come to one of those. They're free, and you can learn about them at spsevents.org.
And timed with when this episode goes live, the ones that are coming up pretty soon, October 20th, we've got a few. Baltimore, Brussels, Boston. There's a
bingo.
There's a B thing going on there. Then skip to the next week, October 27th, another B, Barcelona, Cincinnati, Redmond. And November 3rd is a really nice one. I've been hearing some good things about this and some of the things they're doing, especially to actually help the local economy in San Juan. So a lot of interesting things going on with SPS always. If you check the calendar, there will be one close to you or at least worth flying not too far away to get to those on-the-ground training, real people, and free. It's free.
Coming up later in November, a large team here from Redmond will be flying over to Copenhagen for ESPC. Not extra SPC, but the European SharePoint Conference. That'll be in Barcelona, November 26th to 29th. You can find out more at sharepointeurope.com.
Yeah, and that's another nice moment for us to share, hey, here's what we said at Ignite, and also some progress of what things have been going on since then that are already in production.
And the things that weren't totally ready for the keynote at Ignite in September, we usually have them ready for take two for ESPC.
Yeah, so this is the cooking sound that you hear at Ignite. And at ESPC, you hear the ding. Then in December, if you're still hungry right before Santa arrives, there's the Office and SharePoint Live event. This is back in Orlando, Florida. It's a really interesting event where they actually co-locate a number of different technologies that have a focus for a lot of different training. Think of SharePoint, Office 365, of course, but then there are actually some opportunities if you wanted to learn about Visual Studio, SQL Server, and there are other things around tech mentoring, AI, and of course, modern apps. So there's a lot focused on the developer by nature of who is actually running that event, which is our friend Andrew Connell. There will be a Microsoft keynote plus numerous top-level sessions for IT and developers. It's a very focused event, and it goes from December 2nd to the 7th, again in Orlando. That's Office and SharePoint Live. Thank you to all of our guests on today's show. Kurt Dicus, Scott Christensen, Michelle Mauro, and Trisha Cunningham from Funko, and of course Bob German and Sean Squires from Microsoft, and you, our listeners.
We encourage you to check out our show page for photos and links to all of what was discussed today and more. Go to aka.ms/theintrozone.
We love hearing from listeners. Do send us your questions and feedback for the SharePoint teams, for Chris and I. You can reach us via Twitter at SharePoint, at mcashman, that's with a K, and at cmcnulty2000, or email us at theintrozone@microsoft.com.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and tell all your friends, peers, and family members about the show.
Thanks so much for listening. We're your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty.
This has been The Introzone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet.
Okay, it's official. We are very much in the final sprint to Election Day. And face it, between debates, polling releases, even court appearances, it can feel exhausting, even impossible to keep up with. I'm Brad Milkey. I'm the host of Start Here, the daily podcast from ABC News. And every morning, my team and I get you caught up on the day's news in a quick, straightforward way that's easy to understand, with just enough context so you can listen, get it, and go on with your day. So, kickstart your morning. Start smart with Start Here and ABC News, because staying informed shouldn't feel overwhelming.